Okay, listeners, so there are a few things you probably know about me. One is that I'm on the road a lot. Two is that I walk a lot. I love to walk. And also that I live in New Hampshire. And the weather here is pretty unpredictable, doesn't matter the season, and it's wet a lot. So there are these great new shoes that I have been so lucky to be able to wear. They are from Vessi, and they are called the Courtside Classic. That's me. So I love the way that these look. I love that they're waterproof. They're super comfortable, which every Vessi shoe that I've had has been incredibly comfortable. So if you are interested in getting an incredibly stylish and versatile and absolutely functional pair of sneakers, the Courtside Classic, these are the ones you want to go with. Head out in the rain with the Courtside Classic, Vessi's 90s inspired sneakers. Discover more waterproof styles at vessi.com/flusterclux. Get your pair today to get an automatic 15% off your first purchase at checkout. When you look at an anxious parent's desire to be in touch with their kids all the time, I would venture to say, and the research backs me up on this, is that ultimately that is going to be more problematic to your kids' growth, development, mental health, able to function in the world than all the other things that people are putting forth as a reason to have cell phones.
Welcome to Season 7 of Flusterclux with Lynn Lyons, where we'll talk about managing anxiety and all the other emotions too. We tackle the serious stuff without being too serious. I'm your co-host, Robin. I'm Lynn's sister-in-law, and I'm here to ask your questions.
And I'm Lynn Lyons. I'm an anxiety expert, speaker, mom, and author. I've been a therapist for 35 years. Parenting can be a flusterclux, and I'm here to help you find your way. I'll tell you what to do and what to say.
Hey, Lynn, back to school is fully underway.
Fully underway.
Oh, I got a letter from my kid's school. He's going into 8th grade, and I saw something in it that was delightful to me. Our school district, at least for the middle school, I don't have a high schooler anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the other schools are doing, but they are now enforcing a bell-to-bell school policy for phone use. Like phones have to be in lockers all day long.
Mm-hmm. And this is interesting to me, and I'm hearing this a lot. And I even just out of curiosity put a few questions up on our Flusterclux Facebook page to see what's happening in other schools. And schools are really sort of saying, yikes, the cell phone stuff is out of control. Duh. I mean, we knew that. My older son started high school in 2013, which means that when you look at when kids started getting smartphones, when this thing really changed, 2012. So 2013, totally naive. We did not know what we were up against. And there was a cell phone policy, which is like, hey guys, you can't have your cell phones in class. And everybody's like, okay. And of course, that went by the wayside very quickly. And now use of smartphones in schools is just become out of control. Just everywhere.
Yeah, I feel like it got really lenient after the pandemic, after we came back to school, all of that. I feel like there are no policies anymore. And I feel like there were some maybe prior to the pandemic that weren't as enforced, but at least like in practice, there was lip service to it.
I would say probably even before the pandemic, like by 2018, 2019, they weren't really enforcing anything. So there were policies, but what started happening pretty quickly is that the policies were enforced. So kids would have a smartphone. If they took it out in class, the teacher was allowed to take it, bring it to the principal's office. There was a huge backlash from parents. And the more valuable these phones became, valuable as in they cost a lot of money and also valuable because there was so much information on them, the more that parents pushed back that a school would take a phone away. And so teachers really gave up pretty quickly. Like before the pandemic, I think teachers and administrators had given up with any sort of enforcement of you can't have your phone out in class. Then after the pandemic, it really took off because kids were using them just openly. And this is going to piss some people off, but I'm going to say it too. Teachers were using their phones too. So we blame kids for being addicted to their phones. Teachers have the same issues, particularly younger teachers One of my kids, it was very clear that his teacher was planning her wedding during class. They all knew it. She was on her phone all the time. So there was sort of this kind of nod, nod, wink, wink. Everybody has a phone. It's just the way it is. We're not going to do anything about it. We're going to complain. We're going to be upset about it. We're going to say, oh, kids can't learn when they have their phones out, but we're not going to do anything. And things have shifted.
We did an episode this past year where you talked about the data of what it was doing to kids in learning, and even the presence of a phone that wasn't being in use, so still served as distraction and inability to focus and all these things. And I told my kids at the time, like, oh, we just did this episode you all wouldn't like. And in fairness, they actually said, it's 100% true. And they started commenting on people can't focus. My son said that like very few people even read for pleasure in his class. He's one of the few people who reads books because we insist on it, because you said that's so important, right? Like it's a thing that even the kids recognize.
Yeah. And that's what's really becoming interesting. And so many people, many of you listening may have heard about the book Anxious Generation, which came out, I think, at the beginning of this summer. Jonathan Haidt, Haidt. This book went zooming to the top of the New York Times bestseller list. And I actually was sort of like, okay, I'll have to read it. And he's not going to say anything that I don't already know. And it's just going to irritate me and blah, blah, blah. I will tell you, it is incredibly compelling. The suggestions that he makes at the end of the book, I'm sort of like, yeah. What can parents do? Sort of take the phones out of the bedrooms. Yeah. I got all that. I've been talking about that. But the first half of the book talks about the research, talks about the shift that happened, gives data, gives information about how incredibly powerful these devices are. It was a page turner for me. And one of the things that he talked about, which you are echoing right now, is that the kids themselves are not really pleased with how addicted they are to social media. They themselves are saying we are being held hostage. He thought that when he asked young people, if we got rid of Snapchat, if we got rid of Instagram, how would you like that? He thought that the kids were going to be like, no, please don't take it away. And the kids, the young people were like, we wish it was never invented. We wish it wasn't a part of our childhood.
There is a video on social media, the irony, that shows a snippet of a high school cafeteria in the late 90s before anyone had phones. And everyone's talking and being silly and doing things. And then it juxtaposes with the current where everyone is sitting down, staring at phones and not interacting. My daughter saw that and she took that message deeply. She's like, we were robbed of what a high school experience could actually be because of phones.
And again, like we say, the kids, but I did a in-person training. I step into situations and there are auditoriums full of people. In the old days, people would be chatting with each other. If you didn't know each other, you'd be catching up. When I step into a group of adults now, 90% of them are just sitting on their phones. And I was giving a presentation at a school recently, just probably 2 weeks ago, and I called people out because I was talking about how we observe people and judge people. And I said, you're judging me. I get judged for a living, right? I'm standing up in front of you offering this information. I said, I'm judging you too. And I said, I know right now I can look out there. I know who's on their phone while I'm speaking. I can see that you're on your phone while I'm speaking, and I am judging you because it's this lack of interaction. I mean, I guess if you watch The Breakfast Club, right? If you watched what that was like, imagine kids spending a day in detention now if they were allowed to have their phones. I don't know if they are or not. Probably 2 years ago they were. Nobody would be interacting with each other. The movie couldn't have happened. And the thing that we have to recognize, and this is what Anxious Generation, that book was so captivating to me, is that he really does a great job of talking about the skills that kids need to develop and how phones are getting in the way of that. And, you just mentioned one when we talk about executive functioning, two of the things, and I've mentioned this before, two of the things that are so important for executive functioning, the development of, are reading for pleasure. He talks a lot about unsupervised play. He talks a lot about developing autonomy, letting kids go off and do things, and makes a very direct correlation between the lack of reading, the lack of unsupervised play, the lack of risk taking that we're seeing because of phones. So they are taking risks, but the risk they're taking is, I'm going to send this text message. I'm going to put up this Instagram post. I'm going to do a lip sync on TikTok to a song, but I'm going to spend an enormous amount of time making sure that what I am putting out there is absolutely perfect, that won't cause any judgment, that I won't be rejected. This is what we have done by giving kids phones. They are not interacting in what we call a synchronous way. So they're not interacting live. They're not having live conversations. It's getting in the way of so many aspects of their development. And if we just look at school and what it's interfering with in school, both academically and socially, schools better put cell phone policies in place, and then they better enforce them. Because that's my fear right now, is that the policy will be put in place and it will not be enforced.
Let's take a break. And when we come back, I think we should really talk about how we as the parents have a role here and what our role should be. There are so many coaches today. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath, and on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workouts, sleep, even stress management.
All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for the day based on your measurements.
You can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game.
Your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food you eat into the fuel that keeps you going. And because it's the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits. Easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness, sleep, all the stuff that matters to you.
It can also track your cycle as well as the onset of menopause, and adjust your recommendations to keep your metabolism healthy through hormonal shifts so you can keep up your energy and stave off those really difficult cravings.
If you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/fluster to get 15% off your Lumen.
That's lumen.me/fluster for 15% off your purchase. Thanks, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode.
Did you know that Americans take about 20,000 breaths a day and spend an average of 90% of their time indoors? The indoor air that we breathe can be up to 100 times more polluted than the outdoor air, according to the EPA. Indoor air pollutants can cause respiratory symptoms like sneezing, congestion, scratchy throat, and even more serious health problems like lung and heart disease. So what's the solution? Introducing Air Doctor, the air purifier that filters out 99.99% of dangerous contaminants so your lungs don't have to. This includes allergens, pollen, pet dander, dust mites, mold spores, and even bacteria and viruses. Air Doctor comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so if you don't just love it, send it back for a refund minus shipping. Head to airdoctorpro.com and use the promo code Flusterclux, and you'll receive up to $300 off the air purifier. Exclusive to podcast customers, you will also receive a free 3-year warranty on any unit, which is an additional $84 value. So lock this special offer by going to airdoctorpro.com and use promo code Flusterclux. Okay, Robin, we don't have babies anymore, but boy, oh boy, are those memories pretty fresh. If you're a new parent, I mean, there are times when you don't even get a shower, but at least Hello Bello's got your baby's butt covered.
Yeah, stocking up on cold brew is key, but Hello Bello believes all families deserve premium, affordable baby products with diaper bundle subscription services that include 7 packs of diapers and 4 packs of plant-based wipes, so you never run out of supplies. Better yet, they're delivered to your door so you can set and change and cancel your delivery schedule whenever you want.
It's really a busy parent's dream. And aren't all parents busy? I mean, can you be a non-busy parent?
Nope.
It was named the best diaper subscription by New York Magazine and winner of the 2022 Good Housekeeping Parenting Award. Hello Bello will keep you well stocked on diapers and wipes.
Go to hellobello.com/fluster to get 30% off your first customized bundle and a full-size freebie product of your choice. That's hellobello.com/fluster to start bundling with 30% off your first order.
Don't forget, that's hellobello.com/fluster. Okay, we're back.
Lynn, earlier this week, I saw you posted something on your Instagram. It's funny how we're like referencing and we're talking about it. So obviously it's not about all or nothing. The usage of this is it's here, but we create boundaries with it during our educational time of day for kids.
And developmentally. So I am pretty all or nothing with young kids having phones.
Okay, well, actually, let's start there. If you were to wave your wand, what do you think is the ideal way for parents to make decisions about phones? And then I want you to be honest about what you did.
Okay. Remember, it was easier for me.
Smartphones weren't really a thing. It was flip phones still.
Right. Well, and smartphones started coming out. But remember, my older son started high school in 2013. And when we look at the research, it was 2012 where they really started becoming so ubiquitous, right? Kids had them.
That's right.
So I had a little bit of a buffer. I had a little bit of time. And if you talk to parents of kids my age, 26 and 24, we're like, phew. But so in high school, it was a little bit different. I don't think truly that kids before high school need to have smartphones. And let me just say this too, because you guys, you parents are sneaking under the radar. They don't need Apple Watches. You don't need a watch on your wrist that allows you to do almost everything that a smartphone does, except now we're going to call it a watch instead of a phone. Doesn't matter.
My son, when he heard about the school policy, he's like, well, I'm still taking my Apple Watch. And I was like, nope, you're not. That upset him too. He was like, what? I can't have that. I said, no, the whole point, all of the research talks about not you specifically, right? I'm not blaming you, child. Your brain cannot develop the skills of focusing and so many other things when there is a consistent and able distractor. And that is putting you at a disadvantage of learning without giving you any advantages. I'm tough about that stuff.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too about kids having phones and Apple Watches is that it's not allowing them to develop autonomy and problem solving skills because their parents are in contact with them all the time. So during the school day, the inability for a child or for a parent to be back and forth in communication all day long, I think is a really helpful thing. It's just like when kids go to summer camp, they don't have electronics, and so they're not in touch with their parents on a daily basis for 2 weeks. That's good. And so what I'm so adamant about is that we are getting in the way of kids not only being able to learn and being able to focus, but learning how to interact with each other in real time. Because how many times have you seen a group of teenagers and they're all sitting together, like you said, at the cafeteria or even at a family reunion, and every single one of them is on their phones? They're not looking at each other in the eye. They're not having a conversation. They may be watching something and then saying, hey, watch this video. Hey, look at this. Adults do that too, of course. But we're not giving them the opportunity to develop social interactive skills. And so if they have a phone with them, if they have an Apple Watch with them, they're not learning how to do those things. And it's happening earlier and earlier and earlier, younger and younger and younger.
So I just want to represent parents of younger kids because I still have a middle schooler. It's not very realistic, Lynn, to have a middle schooler without a phone. If you have a boy specifically, because if my son had not had a phone, he has a lot of friends in a lot of circles that he didn't have when he started middle school. But what they do is they game at home on FaceTime. Like, so they're playing a video game together and laughing about it and talking about it and problem solving, playing the video game, but they're using FaceTime to play as if they were playing together. And during the pandemic, that's when we saw that happen. And that was actually one of the, I'm just speaking of like how it really did play out for us. We absolutely believe in phone use should be restricted in most other circumstances, but especially during certain times, it really did develop social connection that evolved into authentic real life connection too. So I just think that moms would say like, yeah, but what about?
Okay, so let me address that. For one, the pandemic happened, and thank goodness that we had Zoom. I mean, it's the way I did my job. It's the way we communicated with our parents. It's the way that kids communicated with each other. Okay, it's almost 2025. And what has happened from 2021 to 2025 is that on every measure of young people, anxiety, depression, self-harm, and suicide, it's gotten worse. So when a parent says to me, oh, but it was so helpful. Okay, I get it during the pandemic, but then why have things gotten worse since then? It wasn't like we discovered this amazing way to connect. And then after the pandemic, we were like, yay, we figured out how to have friends. Everything's going to be better now. It's all gotten worse. I get what you're saying. And I also get when you say as a parent, it's unrealistic to say he shouldn't have a phone because this is the way they communicate. The issue right now is that parents, particularly of younger kids, so we're talking about 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th grade, those kids are on phones all the time. And what parents are telling me, which I think you would say too, is that everybody else has it. So I can't be the one parent to take that away from my kid because then they're going to be ostracized. They're going to be excluded. This is real. And that's what I said in that Instagram post. It is real that if you are the only child who doesn't have this, that you are going to be left out. Look, honestly, I've given up on the high schoolers. We're not going back. That ship has sailed. If we think about it in terms of smoking, they are all hugely addicted to their cigarettes. Fine, smoke. I don't really mean that, but but I mean, that's how I think about it. That ship has sailed. I'm not going to be able to say to a junior in high school, like, hey, you should get a flip phone. It's not going to happen. But if we're thinking preventatively, if we can get ahead of this, that parents need to agree together that they are not going to give their 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th graders smartphones or Apple Watches because it is just too powerful and too addicting and too distracting. And they are developing habits in 3rd grade that are only going to be more powerful and more necessary in 8th grade because they are not doing the things that we know are really important for development in those early years.
So I would agree. I don't think that for elementary school, there's just nothing that comes from cell phones in 3rd, 4th, and 5th and 6th grade usage. I agree with that. And parents that I saw who did do that, there were some other things. One is like, I'm going to be the cool parent and just not provide any boundaries. Like there was definitely that camp. And then there was another camp I saw that we should also talk about where the parent was like, I need to be in touch with my child at all times.
So let's talk about those two things. One, the cool parent. Okay, here's another thing that I'm seeing and hearing about again, because I've been talking to high schoolers about this. Back when I was a kid in the 80s, the cool parent was the one who let you come to the house and drink. That stopped because there was public shaming and also probably some pretty hefty lawsuits that it was no longer cool as a parent. I lived it and I heard it. I'd rather have my kid learn to drink here. They're going to drink anyway, so let's have them drink in the house and I'll take their keys away. And then if they get sick and if they're vomiting, at least they're doing it under the supervision of an adult. All of that was ridiculous. The message that if you were a teenager, you had to find the parent who would let you do something that was incredibly harmful to you. Because by the way, teaching kids to drink early doesn't make them better drinkers. It makes them better drinkers when they get older. That's coming back, by the way. So I've been talking to high school students and I'm hearing a lot these days of like, yeah. So there's houses now where we know we can drink. One young man told me recently that there's a house where they all go to drink and the parents are cool, although he didn't see it was so cool, but still he participated. The parents will take shots with the kids. That's a parent who has a drinking problem, by the way. So if we use this mentality of cool parent by letting kids do things that we know are harmful, that's an interesting definition of cool parent, isn't it? It's sort of like the way that middle schoolers define popular. You're like, you're not using that word correctly.
You listen to our episodes on alcoholism, and I was raised by alcoholics. I'm going to judge people.
Yeah. Well, I think, this is the thing is that if we continue to say, well, we just don't want to judge, or you be you, or parent the way that it feels good to you, and we're looking at the outcome of that, it's significant. We can't keep saying our kids are in crisis and we're going to keep doing the things that support the crisis. We can't hold both of those thoughts in our brain at the same time. It's not working. All right. Let's say we have the parent who says, I'm going to give my kid the phone. I'm going to put no limits on it. The research shows that the more time you spend on a screen, particularly for girls are more at risk for this, the more likely it is that you are going to develop depression. They're still being a little hesitant with causation, but correlation is there. It is interfering with sleep. I was just watching Good Morning America. I turned on the TV when I was getting dressed the other morning, and there's new research that came out that hit the mainstream shows that giving toddlers iPads is resulting in more anger, more aggression, difficulty with sleep, difficulty with attention. So they have this expert on talking to George, and he says, what can we do about it? Sorry, but let's hear the stupid thing they're going to say now. And she's like, parents need to model with their own usage. You need to have limits in a family where you have places where you're not using devices. I was like, oh my God, it's a toddler. Don't give them an iPad. And she said, we need to make sure that our kids aren't on an iPad. These are toddlers we're talking about. And then George says, gosh, how do we do that? That's just so hard to do. Really? If we were talking about tequila, don't give your toddler tequila. I mean, it's not that hard. Just don't give them an iPad. We have to start looking at the way that we have given ourselves permission to do things that we know aren't good for kids. And then you said the anxious parent who wants to be in touch with their kids all the time. Mark my words, everybody. This is what's going to happen with the cell phone policies.
I hosted a slumber party for my daughter and her friends. And there was one parent, and I said, we're going to put all the cell phones in a basket and they're going to charge overnight. And you all are going to go and have old-fashioned fun today, for your slumber party. One of the parents was like, no, I have to be in touch with my daughter at all times.
So this is what's going to happen because every cell phone policy, every bell-to-bell cell phone policy is going to say, unless there's a medical need. Now, there are certain conditions, certain things that kids deal with in which being able to be in touch or having a cell phone is really helpful. I would imagine if you had a kid with type 1 diabetes, if you had a kid with epilepsy, that would be an incredibly helpful tool for you to have as you're parenting your child through this chronic illness.
And yet, there's a school nurse who's probably even more helpful than a cell phone because they're on site with the child.
Yeah, correct. That's a very good point, actually. Yeah. The medical condition that I am concerned about, as all of you can imagine, is that parents are going to say, my child has an anxiety disorder, and so they need to have their phone. And it's already come up. So there was somebody who wrote in on the Facebook questionnaire that said that their child, because of their anxiety, has to be able to listen to music all the time. And so they are allowed to have one earbud in their ear to listen to music because that helps them with their anxiety. What is going to happen, mark my words, is that people in my profession and other outside providers are going to start writing letters to schools saying, my child needs to have a cell phone because of their anxiety. Now, what would be interesting is if a parent wrote a letter or a provider wrote a letter that said, my child needs to have their cell phone because of my anxiety, because I want to be in touch with them all the time. what I will hear and what I've already heard is that parents are concerned that something is going to happen to their children at school and they need to be able to get in touch with them. And it can be anything from as dramatic as a school shooting. And somebody mentioned that on the Facebook page. If we look at the statistics, right? I go back to saying, gosh, we keep saying our kids need these cell phones because they help them socially. And then we look at what's happening to their rates of depression and anxiety and isolation and loneliness, et cetera. Is there any data that says that kids having cell phones has prevented a horrible, horrible tragedy? I don't know. Maybe people will say, well, kids were able to communicate with each other and they were able to get to a safe place. One of the points that Jonathan Haidt makes, which I think he makes brilliantly, is that when we're looking at keeping kids safe, and I'm making air quotes because I'm sick of the word safe, everybody, keeping kids safe is that we are ignoring how detrimental these smartphones are for kids in very measurable ways. And we're focusing instead on these other dangers that are far less common and far less likely. So, for example, kidnapping. When you look at an anxious parent's desire to be in touch with their kids all the time, I would venture to say, and the research backs me up on this, is that ultimately that is going to be more problematic to your kids' growth, development, mental health, able to function in the world than all the other things that people are putting forth as a reason to have cell phones.
Let's say that again, because I think that it's such an important point and I want to make sure people understood that. And I just want to say for a second too, I know we get a little worked up on this topic. We're both very compassionate about people who are struggling with this. They know they should let go, but they have not figured out the skills to make this. And this is something that you can talk about in a second. But what you just said is that people tend to focus on these horrific worst case scenarios that actually have very low stats as things to focus on. That is the content that then drives them to allow something like constant cell phone usage, which is actually something you can control and is guaranteed to have a negative outcome.
Correct. Absolutely. Well said. Give you an example. So a parent will say, it's really important for my younger child, my fifth grader, to have a smartphone with them all the time because of school shootings and kidnappings. So I want them to have the cell phone all the time because I have to be able to get in touch with them. Then, if I ask, that child also has their smartphone in their bedroom at night because that's just become the habit. It's just become, I have my smartphone with me all the time. And what we know about smartphones in bedrooms is that it interrupts sleep. One of the things that predicts difficulty in children's growth and learning and mood and social interaction is being sleep deprived. Being sleep deprived is a huge and consistent predictor of kids having difficulty in all sorts of areas. So a parent can say to me, I want them to have a smartphone because I have to be able to get in touch with them if they get kidnapped. Okay. And then also that child, I'm going to let them have the smartphone at night in their bedroom because they like to listen to music or because it's their alarm clock. Those two things, right? So you're giving your kid a smartphone for this very unlikely reason. And what happens is the use of the cell phone just becomes so pervasive that it actually causes real problems in real ways that the parent is not paying attention to.
I think a lot of parents are like, well, they don't have to call me if they're being kidnapped. I'm tracking them.
That's true. Yeah.
It's funny that we're talking about this because just this morning, there was an instance of two attempted kidnappings in this town, and it was a clickbait headline, and I read it.
Yes, I saw it everywhere.
Oh, you saw it too? In both instances, the kidnapping effort of the girls in two different towns was foiled not because of a cell phone, but because other adults were paying attention and intervened. Mm-hmm. Thank goodness they weren't on their phones.
Correct. Very good point, Robin. Here's the thing. The likelihood of your child being abducted by a stranger, for one, has not changed since the 70s, everybody. I say this all the time. The statistics are the same. And the majority, the huge majority of kidnappings of children in the United States of America is by a non-custodial parent. Okay. So all I'm saying is that we've got to look at the risks, and we're not very good at weighing risk. There are many more people that are afraid to fly than are afraid to drive. I say this all the time. Driving is way more dangerous than flying, but we're not rational about it. So it's hard for parents, once you get this fear in you, once you're anxious, once you decide, once you're convinced that the way to keep your child safe is to give them a smartphone, it's hard to undo that. Now, earlier you said, Robin, what are the skills if we talk about parents not giving their kids phones, not tracking their kids, not having their phones in the bedroom? What's the skill that the parent has to develop? Because you're right. A lot of parents are like, oh, I know, I shouldn't. And even when I present them with the facts, they're like, I know, I've heard it. I feel so guilty. The skill that you have to develop is the ability to tolerate your kid being really pissed off at you when you take the phone away. The skill of being able to tolerate your own distress of not knowing exactly where your kid is, exactly what your child is doing every moment of the school day. It is a distress tolerance. That's the skill that you have to develop, because parents don't generally argue with me that they think these cell phones are the best thing that ever happened. They're generally on the same page as you and I of saying, oh my gosh, our kids aren't interacting. We go to a party, they're all just sitting on their phone. But then when I say take it away, and this is what happens all the time, they're like, oh, but she's going to be mad.
Let's talk about that. So there's a parent who's listening who's like, I can't take my kid's cell phone away because they will flip out. Okay, so this is a learning moment here. And there's a duality to this. There is the learning moment to tolerate your kid flipping out. And there is also the learning moment for your kid to learn with practice, because the phone consistently gets taken away, how to manage their anger. The first few times might be volatile, but that's clearly an indication that you guys need to work on something.
Well, it's also clearly an indication of how incredibly powerful these phones are, because they feel like if you've got a kid who's used their phone all the time, who believes that that's their connection to the world, that's their entertainment, that's the way that they communicate with their friends, and you take it away, they're going to flip out because they've learned that this is how they stay connected, and they don't have a way to do it.
Yeah. So I'm not going to pretend that I do this perfectly at all. I'm figuring this out because I feel like I'm a realist. I know what I should do based on our conversations. There's a balance, right? And so here's how we approach it. And I actually just had a conversation with my son where I was like, there's a new sheriff in town this year. So focus on the reductions of use where it can really matter. So that means that when my son, who will probably leave his phone in his locker, I am going to remove that watch because it's not going to help him. I want to go full on non-distraction in the classroom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can I tell you what I also love what my school's policy was? They were like, third time offense, we confiscate. And then I love that they said, and we're not responsible for any lost or stolen confiscated items, sucker,
Yeah.
right? Like, yeah, you're going to lose your phone. And we've already said, if you lose your phone, yeah, good luck buying a new one. We're not replacing that phone. So we can focus on the evening. We can moderate. You have the phone here for some socializing and some game playing, decompressing from school. You have to have homework time and sleep time. But it's like, it's my alarm clock. Get him an alarm clock. My noise machine. Get him a noise machine. And so that is where you can have control.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not unrealistic either. I'm not saying that no kids should have phones. I'm saying that don't give your third grader a smartphone. Don't give your sixth grader a smartphone. Like, I really think like delay, and then set limits. Kids should not have phones in their bedrooms. Adults should not have phones in their bedrooms, but kids should not have phones in their bedrooms. They shouldn't have them at the dinner table. They shouldn't have them in school. There are definitely times where we use our phones to entertain ourselves, to decompress. I mean, I'm the same way. I was just talking to my mom about this yesterday. Twitter has gotten me totally sucked back in again. I got to take it off my phone. I took it off my phone before the last election. I got to take it off my phone. I get totally sucked into it. We were just talking about this. I understand how this works. It's designed to suck you in, and it does it very, very successfully. But parents are allowed to set limits on when their child has the phone. What I see over and over again is parents will say, well, you're only allowed to be on your phone for 3 hours a day. And then the 3 hours ends. The kid throws a holy tantrum, and the parent says, all right, fine. Because they're tired. It's the end of the day. They wear them down. I am talking to kids who are in 5th, 6th, 7th grade. They will show me their usage on the phone. And there are kids that are on their phone 8 to 12 hours a day. Now you add up all the hours that kids are awake, and in school, that's an enormous amount of time. I am not being crazy of sort of like, we should get rid of all cell phones. They're not going away. I get it. But parents need to recognize what the phones get in the way of. And here's the thing that I say to parents: what is your child not doing when they're on their phone? What are they not doing?
That's what we talk about all the time. And truthfully, I mean, I'll admit we say this and then the kids are like, yeah. My line is always like, if you can't practice your own self-limiting, then I will impose it. And I just take the phones. But when we take the phone, all of a sudden a musical instrument gets pulled out that hasn't been practiced in a while, or a Lego set gets built, or a book gets read. And it's something that every parent has to get comfortable doing.
I am the first to admit that when I'm tired or this phone will entertain me, and I feel like I am wasting time when I am on my phone.
My daughter and I were just traveling for a work trip for me last week. And so there was a lot of downtime for her. And so I observed her phone usage and screen usage. And I get it that there wasn't a lot else for her to do. She probably intentionally didn't bring a book. And I said, look, no phones tonight. Let's at least watch a movie together. And she's like, how is that different? And I said, let me tell you, when you are just scrolling through TikTok and Instagram with a series of 20-second videos or less, there is no narrative, there's no plot, there's no story. These are just, all they're doing is not allowing you to focus on anything. If we watched a movie together and we talked about the characters and we actually focused enough for 2 hours on a plot, that's actually a very different screen experience.
Well, and this is why people say, well, what about TV? Like, we watched a lot of TV. I mean, some kids, I'm sure, watched 8 or 9 or 10 or 11 hours of TV a day. TV wasn't designed to suck you in and to keep feeding you things. TV also didn't have this whole social judgment component to it. You couldn't interact. Like, I can't even think of a situation where you would be like, well, Gilligan's Island, you watched it and you were done, right? And by the way, in the old days, parents used to limit television watching. So not all parents, of course, but I was allowed to watch, I've said this before, I was allowed to watch one show a week during the school week.
Oh, no, I was a latchkey kid. I was like the classic latchkey kid. I watched a ton of TV when I got home from school until dinner and then did my homework.
But TV is still different, and Netflix is different than social media because it's not designed for one, the interactive part of it and the participatory part of it and getting likes and getting follows and all of that kind of stuff. That's one of the things that we can see is really harmful for social media because it's putting yourself out there in a way in which you are judged and evaluated, in which you are accepted and rejected. Gilligan's Island didn't do that. Wheel of Fortune didn't do that.
Well, you're missing all the good shows from our childhood, too. Think of all of the shows that actually had lessons. The Brady Bunch, The Facts of Life. Like, how much did we learn from The Facts of Life?
Right. Little House on the Prairie.
Little House on the Prairie. There were messages with each of these shows. They're not gaining a lot of information watching Minecraft videos or whatever else they're doing. When we come back, you mentioned that there were some interesting stories in your practice on this topic that I think are worthy to share.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll tell them.
What is HelloFresh? With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. With a changing menu of 50 recipes to choose from each week, HelloFresh makes it easy to always find something the whole family will love. We have been using HelloFresh for the last several months, and what I love is that it has figured out the kind of foods my family likes, so it always suggests meals first that are usually pretty spot on, but there's always so many different options. And back to school season means shopping, after school activities, and a lot less free time. Skip the meal planning and grocery store rush runs with nutritious and delicious meals from HelloFresh. They handle most of the prep too, making getting dinner on the table easier and faster than ever. I gotta share my parenting hack. When people started asking me over and over again, what's for dinner? I kept saying, what do you feel like cooking? And I let them choose the HelloFresh meal that we were given. And guess what? Both my kids cook now. Most family cooks have a few pastas they make or a few ways that you prepare chicken. I love that HelloFresh has busted everything open for us. We now have so many different styles of pasta, and we prepare chicken in so many different ways. Nobody gets bored. It's great. HelloFresh's new 6-portion plans are perfect for feeding the whole family or to have leftovers for effortless lunches the next day. We've all learned little cooking techniques along the way that just make meals taste better. For a limited time, kids eat free. Go to HelloFresh.com/FlustercluxKids to unlock this exclusive offer. 1 free kids meal per box for 2 months while subscriptions are active. That's free kids meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/FlustercluxKids.
This message is sponsored by Greenlight.
A new school year starting soon, and personally, I can't believe I have an 8th grader on my hands as my youngest. So if you're a parent and you want to make this new school year an opportunity for your kids to learn important life skills and continue building independence, for that, I recommend Greenlight.
Greenlight's a debit card and a money app for families. Kids can learn how to save, invest, and spend wisely, and parents can keep an eye on kids' new money habits.
Then there's Greenlight's Infinity Plan, which includes same access to the financial literacy education that makes Greenlight a valuable resource for millions of parents and kids, plus new built-in safety features to give you peace of mind, everything from location sharing, SOS alerts for 911 dispatch, and car crash detection.
But at its core, Greenlight is unique because it builds autonomy with a chores feature that lets you reward your kids for honoring their responsibilities around the house. You can help kids get into their fall routine more easily than ever and build responsibility and autonomy, 2 things that I love.
And you'll remember to pay them.
Yeah, that's right.
I confess I was not so good about that before, and now I have no excuse.
So, no matter which features make the most sense for your household, Greenlight is the easy, convenient way for parents to raise financially smart kids and for families to navigate life together.
Sign up for Greenlight today and get your first month free when you go to greenlight.com/fluster. That's greenlight.com/fluster to try Greenlight for free.
Greenlight.com/fluster. Okay, so it is summertime and it is hot. It has been a really hot summer here in New England. I'm not complaining, but man, hydrating has been really, really important and necessary so that I can keep doing the things that I love to do outside all summer long. There are electrolytes and essential vitamins, clinically tested nutrients from the number one powdered hydration brand in America, Liquid IV. All summer, I have one big tall glass sitting in the fridge. I have my water bottle that I take to the gym or take hiking, and I'm just drinking it all day long. I don't have a very good hydration habit, people. I should drink more water. This has been a key to me getting in the hydration that I need all summer. It's really, really delicious. It hydrates better than water alone. It's got 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink. It's always non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, and soy-free. If you get the Hydration Multiplier sugar-free product, it's got no artificial sweeteners, 0 sugar, 4 delicious sugar-free flavors. I love it. So indulge in hydration this summer with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code FLUSTER at checkout.
That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code FLUSTER at liquidiv.com.
Okay, so now back to the show.
Okay, I love hearing these stories. I haven't heard them yet.
One story, and I think the people who told me this story, I think they listened to the podcast. So, hi, you guys. You guys are awesome. Here's the story. This is a family who is really working to limit social media, to limit smartphone use. And the problem, so their daughter is experiencing the rejection, the taunting, the ostracizing that happens when a parent says, I am not going to let you get social media. Now, this is a child who is not old enough to have social media. She's not in high school. Her parents have done a really good job of limiting her access to this stuff, but she is really suffering in her social circle because she's the only one. And if you saw that post that I did about parents having a meeting, getting together with the moms and the dads and saying, okay, look, we've got this group of girls in this 4th grade class, in this 5th grade class. Let's all agree that we're not going to let them have TikTok. We're not going to let them have Snapchat so that they aren't ostracized. That is such a powerful thing to do. And this family is trying to do it. And it is clear that this little girl is suffering because she is not a part of this social media world, which, to be clear, is not healthy for the other girls that are in this social media world. The parents are very clear about it. They are holding the line, but it's really, really hard for them. And I so wish that the other parents in this group would join together and say, we're not going to have this continue. But I don't think the other parents are. So that's one. So the suffering is real. The ostracizing, the isolation is real. These parents are doing such a good job being clear about this, holding the line. But I'll tell you, they are swimming upstream and it is really, really hard for them.
Yep. Well, okay. So you say that, and have the parents tried? They try and talk to the other friends' parents. They're going to get a lot of pushback.
Yes, which they did, and they did.
And that's unfortunate. So if this ship sailed, maybe in this scenario, if we have listeners of the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th graders, it's a really good idea before this becomes an issue to talk to your kids' friends' parents now.
That's right. Correct. This is why one of my favorite words is prevention. And I also say that if you look around our culture, we're not very good at prevention. We're very reactive. That's what's happening right now with the cell phones, right? We're like, oh my God, what's going on? I haven't given up on this. Like, I think that these parents are on the right track. And I think they're going to continue to talk to their daughter. I think they're going to continue to work with, once the school year starts, they're going to talk to the other friends. I can't quite remember, but I think they have at her school instituted a stricter cell phone policy now because these kids were allowed to bring their phones into school. So I haven't given up on that. They're still young enough. I think these girls are still young enough to have the ship turn around. The other story that I heard, I was talking to a dad recently, and he was telling me he has teenagers, and he was bemoaning the fact, sincerely and deeply, that when his kids were little, they used to do things together. That as a dad, they would go hiking, they would go fishing, they would go out to dinner together. And he said they recently went on a camping trip, and his teenagers, he said they might as well have been in a cardboard box. They didn't want to go on the camping trip. They sat on their phones the entire time. They didn't do any of the activities that they used to do when they would camp. There was no bike riding. There was no sitting around the campfire. All of the things that he really treasured in the early years of his parenting, he said, were gone. And they were gone early because these teenagers got phones at a very early age. He was saying, I just so wish that we didn't give them the phones at all. And I just so grieve for the fact that I don't have the connection with my kids because I am fighting against the phones. And it just brings back, we're at the end of summer here, the beginning of the school year, that there are so many camps where kids are not allowed to have electronics. And when I talk to these kids that come back from that experience, not one kid has ever said to me, I really wish I had my phone at camp. In fact, they say the opposite. They say it was so great to be with all of these friends, all of these kids, and none of us had phones. I loved it. We have to listen to them. They are saying to us, please rescue us from this. Please take us out of this. And parents are like, no, they have to have it. The kids are saying, we are being held hostage. The teens are saying, we wish it was never invented. We have to recognize that this is a problem. I'm glad that schools are putting in new cell phone policies. I am pretty sure that the parents are going to make it very difficult on the school administrators to enforce this. I am also seeing policies in which the policy is we have a no phones out in class cell phone policy, and it is up to the teachers to reinforce it. I don't think that's fair to teachers. I don't think they're going to be able to do anything about it. And that is a totally weenie, wimpy, trying to have it both ways school policy to say that teachers in the classroom are to enforce the cell phones being put away. I don't think that'll work. And I think that if a school is doing that, I think they're being really, really cowardly, to be honest. Get the phones out of the schools. It's not that hard. Well, let me say this. It's not that complicated. It's going to be hard, but it's not complicated. The evidence is clear. Thanks for listening. And if you found this podcast helpful, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find this information.
And if you'd like to dig deeper on any of these topics, we have specialized playlists on our Spotify profile, and the link is in the show notes. Topics like teens, depression, and OCD. Bye, Lynn.
Bye, Robin.
Are you a parent in need of a laugh and a little escape? Look no further. Parenting is a Joke is the podcast you've been waiting for. Hey, I'm Ophira Eisenberg. I'm a stand-up comic and parent. And each week I chat with one of my top comedian pals who, just like you, are juggling careers, busy lives and schedules, and raising a family. You can expect candid stories, hilarious mishaps that happen on stage and at home, and just a lot of laughs. There's no expert advice here. Well, actually, sometimes a good idea does sneak its way in, but mostly just pure, relatable fun to remind you that we're all in this parenting adventure together. New episodes of Parenting is a Joke drop every Tuesday, so tune in, get ready to laugh, unwind, and maybe even feel a little bit better about your own parenting. Because sometimes that's exactly what your therapist, pediatrician, and bartender ordered. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform.